welcome to the Explosive Golf Show. My name is Michael Jacobs, and I'm the head professional of the Michael Jacobs Explosive Golf School. And today's show, the topic of today's show is the Power Why. What is that? What does it mean? And how is it going to help your game? Let's get right into it. When a golfer sets up, we find it real helpful for them to see their arms, left arm, right arm, and their club in the shape of a Y. That's pretty obvious, as plain as can be. And we're going to look how that Y behaves throughout the stroke. When we look at this Power Y, there are three flexible points on the Y. There's three parts of this Y that can be adjusted during the stroke. One is the left wrist, and we want you to see that your left wrist, for our golf swing pattern here, is capable of working up and down. It's also capable of working back and forward. Up and down, back and forward. Also, attached to this part, and part of this Power Y, is the forearm. Now, your forearm is responsible for the rotational aspects of this hands and club. So when we're looking at this first part of our Power Y, the left wrist, the first flexible point, can go up and down, back and forth, and the forearm's in charge of rotation. The next flexible point is the right wrist, and obviously that's going to mimic what the left wrist can do. Forearm's going to be in charge of rotation. So you want to start breaking this down in your mind, and we're going to talk about how we can help you with your golf game with this. And the final is the right elbow. Now, the right elbow can do all various degrees of bending, which will send the right elbow in all different directions. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about the right elbow first. When we're talking about the right elbow, there's two ways that a golfer can move that right elbow during the stroke. And you got to be very careful, because if you're someone who lacks in power and has trouble hitting for distance, what we find a lot of golfers do is this section of the Power Y, this right arm, has a tendency to bend backwards and go into almost like you're pulling a lawnmower cord type thing, backwards, and what happens is the hands stay trapped in front of that right elbow on the backswing. That's what you see. I think everybody calls that a chicken wing. Where the word chicken wing came, I guess it's shaped like a chicken wing. It's one of the oldest terms in golf. Whatever the case that may be. But when the back elbow traps the hands to where the hands can't get above the elbow, that's troublesome. Now, there is some benefit, and where that might be handy in a short shot. I mean, there are some times if I did a little short shot, and I do it sometimes on the course, where I might keep my body pretty still, and I might just work that elbow in that type of position to where the back elbow stays in front of that hand, and it might be okay for a little run-of-the-mill chip shot. Very rare. Don't know if you'd ever use that at home, but I thought I would mention it. So this other way that the elbow can bend, and this is what we're going to hope for in your backswing, is to where it'll bend so that that right hand and the right arm, the club, can bend in such a way that this elbow will point more towards the ground. So that should really be the goal of your backswing. Now, there's going to be varying degrees of how much angle you have on your backswing. We have two famous DVDs, and it's an often asked question. They're different, and they're completely different, and they were intended to be completely different. They're offering you the two extremes of choices on how to swing, and then you're going to either fit in those two extremes or somewhere in the middle. So when we're talking about the location of how much bend or how much lift there's going to be in this right arm, it's going to be totally customary. We like to use the right shoulder. As this right shoulder turns back, we like to use it as a standard staple that we would like to see that arm bend so that our hands and club reach just above that right turn shoulder. So as you're training your backswing at home, we have to relate this how you can improve at home. You might want to make some practice swings. I don't know if you want to put your right hand under your elbow or on top of your shoulder. Under your elbow might be nice. And as you make this backswing, do it so that you can get this arm to go above that right turn shoulder and have this arm bend so that this elbow can face towards the ground. That's a good starting point. In the first DVD we made, The Secrets of the Nuclear Swing, it was a very much of a flatter, more pivot powered stroke to where the change of direction set the right arm. And that's a good way for beginners or someone we're trying to stop from over accelerating at the ball, to where you can see how it's going to be my body pivot and the change in direction that's going to set that right arm and set that club up towards the shoulder. And then our other DVD, Improve Your Swing at Light Speed, is the complete opposite pattern, to where I am going to consciously raise that right arm up above that right turn shoulder and blend it with my body pivot. And I often get asked the question, I watched both DVDs and it seems to be contradictory, but it's not. It's just offering two different patterns. If I just made you all these videos and I said, you're going to do A, B, C, and D, I'd be leaving out half a golfdom. There's going to be plenty of information. Some you're not going to need, but there's going to be anybody can be helped by this information. So that's the big key here. You might not need it all, but there's going to be somebody who needs some part of it. So let's get back to the Power Y here. So this back arm is going to fold so that that elbow points towards the ground and that elbow will not point back behind you. That's one of the big killers of power loss. As that's happening, what we like this right wrist to do is bend back. There might be some degree of it raising up, not consciously. We don't feel like you should do it consciously. So as I'm bending this back arm of the Y, as I pivot my body, I'm going to allow that right wrist to bend back. So that's a good starting point. I don't want that wrist to bend up consciously. You can see how that changes the club face and how that changes the angle I'm swinging on. That is the classic slicer move that leaves the club face wide open. So that's the right arm in relation to this Power Y. Now let's get to the left one. Just right out of the box with the setup when it comes to the Power Y. Impact, when we come into impact, this front part of the Y is going to be flat. This left wrist and the back of the forearm will be flat and in a straight line with this arm. So that would be an impact look of that left side of the Power Y. An address look of that Power Y would be where this arm bends in slightly and the shaft would look straight up and down to me. So that would be an address part of the Power Y, and then as I make that backswing, and the right side I'm going to train separately as this right wrist bends and this elbow bends, I'm going to allow my left hand to flatten. So if the wrist is slightly bent at address, if I choose to do that, it's going to be allowed to flatten. Now, there will be, and this is an often asked question, do I do any rotational move with my forearm on the backswing? And we're going to suggest that more often than not, your pivot's going to do it for you. But let's look at it this way. If I'm swinging on an angle, and let's say as I make this backswing, I'm going to reach some type of angle above that right turn shoulder. What we want to happen through our body pivot as we make that backswing with this wrist flat with the forearm is we want our hand, which my palm is facing you at the camera there, to make a move to where it'll actually be right on and match this angle that this golf club's going back on. So this hand is turning towards the angle that I'm swinging on. If anything, it's looking towards the ground or towards this angle that I'm swinging on. So that's a good way to practice it. Hopefully you're going to do it somewhat through your body pivot, but you know, someone who maybe does something the wrong way or someone who bends that arm wrong is not accustomed to doing any of that stuff, they might have to consciously say, okay, I'm going to put a shaft here right by that right shoulder, and what I'm going to do is as I make my backswing and that hand flattens, my hand is going to turn towards the angle I'm swinging on and be laying right on that line. And then it's going to turn its way towards the ball as it uniformly comes down that angle towards the impact. So that's a few basics on the front part of the Power Y, the back part of the Power Y, and how it relates to the backswing. And hopefully that answers some of your questions. Now let's get into a little bit about the forward swing part of this Power Y.